Then it dawned on her. Lufan had set the entry requirement, level 70 minimum. Meanwhile, up in the arena, the vice principal was checking on the students who'd passed out cold. None of the students had serious injuries, and the vice principal actually gave Lufan props for knowing how to hold back. Over in the level 70 training zone, things were heating up. The senior girl felt like Lufan had tricked her, so she challenged him to guess who she really was. Based on her level and strength, Lufan figured she must be a teacher. That guess made the senior burst out laughing. She then pulled out her flaming spear, ready to start their training session. Without warning, she went straight for the attack, leaving Lufan wounded. He was totally confused by her sudden aggression. The senior chewed him out, warning him not to get cocky just because he'd improved so fast. But Lufan cleared up the misunderstanding. He just wanted to train and was even willing to pay with points. The senior laughed and turned down the money, saying she'd take some of Aunt Han's cooking as payment instead. Lufan didn't argue and drew his sword, ready to get started. They traded blows. Lufan's reflexes and movements kept getting faster. The senior promised that if he could beat her, she'd give him a weapon. But Lufan refused. Even if his sword's stats were kinda weak, he really needed its special effect. So the senior asked what he wanted as a reward. Without hesitation, Lufan said he was after a level removal enchantment. The senior paused mid-attack, stunned that Lufan had no idea how rare that item was. Then she lunged forward, deciding to teach him a harsh lesson. Lufan panicked, but it was too late to back out now. By the end of the session, Lufan had gotten his butt thoroughly kicked. That evening, back at home, Lufan was sprawled out in pain. Aunt Han assumed he'd gotten wrecked by someone from the Feng Pavilion. Chiu checked her tablet and saw Lufan was all over the school's trending news. The video of him wiping the floor with the Feng Pavilion had netizens going wild in the comments. Ying had a feeling the Feng Pavilion members would start fanboying over Lufan like he was some kind of celebrity now. But Lufan didn't care. He just wanted to stay focused on his goals. The next few days were spent grinding in the secret realm. Finally, Lufan hit level 30 and felt a crazy power surge through his body. Aunt Han, still feeling queasy, managed to congratulate him anyway. They all headed to the class advancement hall so Lufan could pick his next profession. As soon as Lufan and his crew stepped out of the secret realm, all the students immediately locked eyes on him. They swarmed around him in no time, totally eager to get his autograph. Turns out, Ying was right. These guys were hardcore Feng Pavilion fans who'd now switched to being Lufan stans. With no other options, Aunt Han racked her brain and came up with a plan. She'd have Lufan go undercover. Once disguised, they finally moved freely without hassle, making their way to the job change hall. Xiaoman couldn't help but feel jealous, secretly wishing a bunch of hot guys would chase after her like that too. Chiu had a feeling Lufan was about to make history. No dragon tamer in recorded history had ever reached a second job change before. When they arrived, Lufan told them not to stress. He'd make the right call when the time came. Swiping his student card, Lufan accessed the job change system. The system kicked in, and a bright white aura wrapped around his body as the process began. Lufan could sense multiple dragon tamer job options flashing through his mind. First up was Dragon Priest, a support-focused role specializing in buffs and healing. Next was Dragon Spellcaster, all about summoning dragon magic and unleashing his tamed dragon skills. The third option is Flame Dragon Warrior, a close combat beast with the ability to transform into a massive dragon form. Just as Lufan was weighing his choices, he suddenly noticed a fourth, unexpected option. Dragon Rider, a class built for dragon-mounted combat, syncing with his dragon to boost skills while riding. Lufan was instantly hooked. This path had zero restrictions, letting him grow in any direction he wanted. Meanwhile, outside the hall, Aunt Han was pacing nervously, totally worried about Lufan's decision. Chiu reassured her to trust him, and sure enough, Lufan soon walked out like it was no big deal. Everyone was dying to know which job he'd picked. Lufan motioned for them to head back first, promising to spill everything later. On the way, he casually dropped his choice, sparking a mix of reactions from the group. What he didn't notice was that his senior had been waiting for him the whole time. Lufan greeted her and asked why she was there. To his surprise, his senior acknowledged Aunt Han like they were old friends. She then cut to the chase. She needed to borrow Lufan for a bit and wanted permission. Aunt Han agreed without hesitation. And just like that, the senior grabbed Lufan's hand and whisked him away. Next thing he knew, they were hopping into a car headed who knows where. Lufan asked where they were going, playing it cool. His senior smirked and said she was buying him a gift, one he'd been dreaming of. Turned out, it was that enchantment level removal item. They finally arrived at the Tianhua auction house, just as the auction was about to kick off. The senior mentioned that the item he was looking for was in this auction house. Lufan almost backed out of bidding for it, since he didn't have enough cash on him. But the senior promised she'd lend him the money, no problem. Lufan swore he'd pay her back. The auction finally started, with the host giving a quick welcome speech before diving right in. No beating around the bush. The first item up for grabs was the exact one Lufan was after. Lufan was shocked when the bidding price shot up crazy fast. The senior schooled him, saying he shouldn't give others any room to outbid him. Just as she was about to place a bid herself, out of nowhere, Princess Jinzhu swooped in with a whopping 3 billion bid, way higher than expected. They hadn't expected Jinzhu to even show up at this auction. The senior knew who she was, including the messy conflict between her and Lufan's group. The senior vowed to help Lufan win, even if it meant going broke, and countered with 4 billion. Of course, that ticked Jinzhu off, and she started looking around to see who dared challenge her. Hongtai calmed Jinzhu down, reminding her they had 5 billion and could still fight back. But then the senior suddenly upped the bid to 5 billion, laughing like it was no big deal. In the end, Lufan and his senior walked away with the win. Princess Jinzhu could only fume, realizing, yet again, that Lufan was behind her frustration. She stormed off, swearing she'd get her big brother to settle the score. After waiting around for a bit, a stunning woman in a sharp formal outfit showed up with the auction item. Turns out, the senior knew her well and immediately ran over to hug her. She then introduced Lufan as her junior. The woman introduced herself as Miss Du, the owner of the auction house and also the senior's sister-in-law. The senior told Lufan to go ahead and check out the item they'd just won. Lufan inspected it. This item could remove level restrictions from any gear or item. Miss Du asked if they had any new items to register with the auction house, but the senior said she was fresh out. Jokingly, the senior nudged Lufan to figure out how he'd pay her back, making him feel like he'd been scammed. Curious, Lufan asked about the item registry they'd mentioned earlier, and the senior showed him. The secret to the senior's wealth is she'd registered tons of new items with the auction house. The auction house paid a flat 3% of an item's value up front, just for listing it. Registering new items was basically free advertising for the auction house. Plus, the items could still be sold later. Lufan pulled out the Dragon King Soul Wing he'd gotten from the Flying Dragon Cemetery and asked what it was worth. Miss Du was floored. He had a top-tier rare item and the commission alone would be 60 million. Then Lufan casually mentioned he had something even rarer. He pulled out his blue dragon egg. Miss Du and the senior were speechless. Miss Du instantly realized Lufan was the dragon tamer from the southern province. Even Lufan's senior was shocked that he had another dragon egg besides Nick's. Miss Du quickly corrected herself, saying not every item could just be priced like that. Lufan thought the egg couldn't be listed, but Miss Du got way too excited and kind of pushed him to register it anyway. As a trade-off, Lufan got to pick any item he wanted every month for free. Meanwhile, the senior still couldn't believe Lufan had another dragon. She was just glad she'd choose the right person to bet Lufan agreed to the deal and handed over the wings and dragon egg for registration right away. Then he decided to grab an enchantment removal item as this month's freebie, so he wouldn't owe his senior anything. The senior was low-key annoyed that Lufan paid her back so fast. It happened so quickly she didn't even get to charge him interest. From now on, Lufan made a mental note to actually show up and claim his monthly rewards. He glanced at the auction house's info board, which was updating in real time. Sure enough, people went nuts when they saw a dragon egg listed. Everyone freaked out, bombarding the staff with questions or calling their connections as soon as possible. Lufan hadn't expected Miss Du to move this fast. They needed to bail before things got wild. Just as predicted, crowds swarmed the auction house to catch a glimpse of the egg. The senior then offered to drop Lufan off on her sleek sports bike. She sped through the streets like a maniac, surprising Lufan with her extreme side. Mid-ride, she asked how many dragons Lufan actually owned. He admitted to having 3 and told her to watch the road instead of grilling him. Lufan fired back, asking about her real identity and when he'd get the full story. But she refused to spill yet. He still had to deal with a special envoy sent to judge Lufan's worthiness as a dragon rep. She warned him the envoy was high level and would probably make things difficult. Lufan just smirked, telling her the envoy should pray if they wanted to mess with him. The senior cracked up at his confidence. Then Lufan grabbed her hand. Next thing she knew, he'd activated dragon wings and yanked her into the sky. After flying for a while, they finally reached the senior's house. Lufan walked her to the door before saying goodbye. The senior waved him off, telling him to head back home already. Secretly, she was pretty happy about the whole thing. Then it hit her when she'd left her motorcycle back on the road. By the time Lufan got home, he was exhausted from the long-distance flight. He pulled out that blue egg, getting ready to hatch it. He warned the others to play nice and not cause trouble. Using his abilities, Lufan started the dragon taming process. The egg glowed brightly, tiny cracks slowly spreading across its surface. Nyx was too busy snacking to care much about the egg. Meanwhile, Fei was super curious, watching closely as her new sibling was about to arrive. Out of nowhere, a constellation appeared in the air, filling Lufan's room with a dazzling light show. They were all mesmerized. And just like that, an adorable light blue baby dragon popped into existence. It was a starry sky dragon, a powerhouse with star-based abilities that could wreck stuff in close combat. Lufan was thrilled to have a melee-type dragon. He cradled it like his own kid. He couldn't even imagine how strong this dragon would get after leveling up. Its stats already topped Nyx's when she was born. Turned out this little troublemaker was just as mischievous as Nyx though. It kept bugging her while she was trying to eat. Lufan figured it was time to give the new dragon a name. After some thought, he decided on Astra. Nyx clearly wasn't a fan. She grumbled in protest. Lufan promised to come up with something better next time. He tried asking Astra what he thought of the name, but Astra didn't even care. He'd already dozed off. Over in a sandy region of the Tai Kingdom, skulls on spikes lined the area, making the whole place look straight out of a horror movie. A guy stood there, phone pressed to his ear as someone on the other end spoke. This was Jinhan, older brother to Princess Jinzhu and one of Tai's top players. He let out an annoyed sigh after hearing his little sister got bullied in the Dragon Kingdom. Now he was heading there to deal with the guy responsible. His buddy reminded him about the national exams coming up soon. Jinhan knew, but that just meant he'd kill 2 birds with 1 stone, settle the score and scout info on Dragon Kingdom's representatives. Lufan spent his days training with his senior. He also made sure to level up his dragons, especially Astra, who'd already hit level 11. Along with Chiu and the others, they kept grinding through secret dungeons. Thanks to that, Xiaoman, Ying, and Chiu all reached level 30. They were pumped and ready to unlock their second professions. With Lufan and his dragons clearing the dungeon, they wrapped things up for now. In front of the class change hall, where the group had just finished their profession transitions, Ying had become a sword dancer, inheriting skills from her previous swordmaster class. Chiu chose the Holy Light Judge path, specializing in offensive abilities. Xiaoman, who'd just completed her change, looked absolutely thrilled. She'd landed the rare and hidden Water Ripple Swordsman class, an insanely lucky break. Now, she could channel water elements directly into her blade. With this upgrade, Xiaoman could finally keep up with the team instead of feeling like dead weight. She got seriously annoyed, though, when Lufan teased her about her promotion from liability to knight. Out of nowhere, Lufan got a call from the school. The envoy had arrived. The setting switched to the academy's reception hall, where Lufan sat in the front row with Miss Guhan. Miss Guhan quickly filled him in. The envoy was a level 76 third-tier shield knight. The vice principal and a hooded figure stepped onto the welcome stage. Lufan's jaw dropped when he spotted the Brahma staff, the top-ranked auction house treasure, in the hooded person's hands. He turned to Miss Guhan, demanding to know who the mystery figure was. She explained it was the academy's headmaster, though nobody really knew their identity. Even their voice was disguised. Suddenly, the envoy strutted in, flanked by guards. The guy acted all high and mighty, demanding the evaluation start immediately. The vice principal greeted him politely. But the envoy blew him off, insisting he'd only deal with the headmaster. The vice principal stood his ground, announcing Lufan as this year's representative. The envoy wasn't happy. They'd rejected his recommended pick after all. So he straight up disrespected Lufan right to his face. He walked up to Lufan, mocking his low level and saying he'd get wrecked in a fight. Then, without warning, he drew a dagger and lunged at Lufan. Turns out, this was the same envoy Lufan had gotten fired before, and the guy was out for revenge. Just as things escalated, the headmaster raised the Brahma staff. A magic circle flared to life. The entire reception hall got swallowed by its glow. Next thing they knew, they were teleported straight to the academy's battle arena. Lufan summoned Nyx, swearing he'd wipe the floor with this guy. But the envoy didn't flinch at the sight of Nyx. He just activated his shield skill, ready to tank her attack. Nyx let out a dragon roar that could inflict negative status effects on anyone caught in its path. But the envoy quickly ducked behind his massive shield, which blocked all those nasty debuffs like it was nothing. The vice principal couldn't help but feel skeptical about Lufan. The level gap between them was just too huge. The envoy mocked Lufan, saying his dragon's roar might scare his classmates, but it was useless against someone like him. Just as the guy was busy bragging, he suddenly dropped to his knees out of nowhere. He got hit with a fear effect, which totally confused him, since his shield was supposed to be immune to fear. Lufan clapped back, sarcastically asking if the envoy planned to judge him while kneeling like that. Pissed off, the envoy activated a skill to break the fear effect and forced himself back up. He lunged at Lufan, but the guy just stood there, completely unfazed. With a casual wave, Lufan summoned two portals, green and blue, calling forth Fei and Astra. The vice principal jolted in shock as two more dragons appeared out of thin air. The envoy barely managed to block Astra's claw strike, his arms shaking from the impact. Lufan kept taunting him, pointing out how the envoy couldn't even land a single hit. Now facing three dragons, the envoy started sweating bullets. The vice principal couldn't deny it anymore. Lufan was downright terrifying. But Lufan just shrugged it off, saying he only had three dragons. Then he snapped his fingers. Fei got the hint and summoned two more Wyvern Kings, just like that. Both the principal and vice principal were speechless, struggling to believe what they were seeing. Even the principal had to admit he was starting to be impressed. Lufan smirked and asked the envoy if he now met the requirements to be the Dragon Kingdom's representative. Without waiting for an answer, Lufan ordered all his dragons to attack at once. Nyx led the charge, throwing a devastating punch straight at the envoy. The vice principal's skepticism turned into sheer panic. One hit from Nyx would have ended the envoy, but at the last second, the envoy dodged by hopping onto his mount. The principal couldn't resist mocking the envoy, who'd been all talk but was now running for his life. Lufan joined in, sarcastically complimenting the envoy's impressive mount. Fed up with the humiliation, the envoy snapped and prepared to counterattack. He and his mount charged straight at Lufan, full speed. The envoy swung his blade with all his might, only for it to bounce right off the barrier Fei had put up around Lufan. Lufan laughed, telling him he'd need one more hits like that just to break the shield. Finally, it sank in. The envoy stood no chance against a guy with multiple dragons at his command. Lufan began chanting the Blue Dragon King's roar, fully intending to crush the envoy without mercy. While the envoy was distracted, Astra blurred forward, appearing right in front of him. Astra's claws slashed hard, sending the envoy stumbling back. Then, Lufan's lightning strike hit dead on, knocking the guy clean off his mount. Lufan kept taunting him, asking where the big, tough envoy who promised to teach him a lesson had gone. All he saw now was a powerless, desperate man. As the envoy lay there, Lufan gathered another lightning spell right in front of his face. The magic hit the envoy again, sending a thick cloud of smoke billowing around the arena. The envoy was seen sprawled helplessly on the ground, completely defeated. With a mocking grin, Lufan apologized to the envoy for accidentally killing his supposedly impressive mount. The vice principal suggested the envoy just call it quits and admit Lufan's strength. But the envoy's arrogance made him snap at the vice principal to shut up. When the vice principal tried to reason with him again, the principal stopped him. The principal knew the envoy was about to lose, and it was gonna be embarrassing. Desperate, the envoy lunged forward with a wild, incoherent scream. Lufan dodged every sloppy attack like it was nothing. Then he delivered a brutal kick straight to the envoy's gut. The envoy went flying backward like a rag doll. Calm and confident, Lufan declared the fight over, but he'd be waiting if the envoy ever wanted a rematch. With a chilling, murderous aura, he made it clear there'd be no mercy next time. The envoy passed out cold right after. The panicked vice principal rushed to check on him. Meanwhile, the principal couldn't help but wonder just how much of his real power Lufan had used. Lufan admitted honestly, not even 1%. His dragons hadn't used any skills and barely moved. The principal, amused, just walked away from the arena. Something about the principal felt way too familiar to Lufan. The scene shifted to the snowy northern border of the Dragon Nation. The envoy had no choice but to acknowledge Lufan as the Dragon Nation's representative. Grandmaster Jing burst out laughing, imagining the envoy signing the agreement in tears. He then ordered one of his subordinates to prepare a griffin. He was heading to the Dragon Capital Academy. He left his duties to his underlings, planning to return in 2 days. Back in Lufan's room, he was examining a hidden realm located in Tidal Bay, about 3,000 kilometers away. He told his agent he'd changed his mind about going there. Suddenly, the system gifted him a divine treasure map. Lufan was pumped. It'd been ages since he got something this valuable. But out of nowhere, a massive fireball came crashing toward his villa. The explosion tore through the place, reducing it to rubble. The attack came from some mysterious man floating in the air like it was no big deal. The guy pulled out a teleportation stone from his hand like he was about to dip out of there. But Lufan showed up, calling all his dragons and zooming straight at the mysterious man. He slashed at him with dragon claws, messing up his teleportation and revealing who he really was. Lufan recognized the guy. It was that old man from the welcome ceremony during the evaluation thing. Chiu told the other students to report everything to the school authorities as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the old man wasn't about to let Lufan walk away. He hit him with some restraining magic, tying him up. Then he went full kamikaze mode, trying to take Lufan down with him in a suicide blast. Chiu and Ying immediately rushed to help. Lufan struggled to break free, but it was useless. Dude was locked in tight. So he yelled at Fei to throw up a shield and protect everyone nearby. Everyone was freaking out, super worried about Lufan, just when things looked hopeless and the old man was about to explode. Suddenly, the school principal's Brahma staff stabbed him from behind. The guy dropped dead on the spot, hitting the ground hard. The principal and Lufan just stared at each other, both shook by what just went down. Lufan regrouped with his crew, and Aunt Han immediately started fussing over him. Meanwhile, Chiu and the others grilled him about who the attacker even was. Lufan admitted he'd seen the guy at the evaluation ceremony before. Vice Principal explained the man was actually a respected teacher at the academy. Nobody saw this betrayal coming. Chiu and Aunt Han called out the academy's weak security and demanded a full investigation. The vice principal promised to look into it and keep them updated. The next day, inside the principal's office at the Capital Dragon Academy, the principal was debriefing someone about the whole mess. That someone turned out to be Grandmaster Jing, who just asked for alcohol instead of reacting to the report, which, of course, annoyed the principal big time. Grandmaster Jing told him to chill. He already had a plan. He was going to take Lufan up north with him, away from all the assassins. The principal doubted Jing had time to actually train Lufan, though. But Jing had been watching Lufan's progress and figured he didn't need hands-on teaching anyway. Plus, he swore he'd keep the kids safe. Over at Villa Number 2, Lufan was in the middle of some kind of transaction with a secret nature agent. Ying asked if Lufan was planning on going somewhere far away. Lufan made it clear he wasn't going anywhere until the school finished their investigation. Ying told him to give everyone a heads up if he ever decided to leave, and Lufan nodded like he got the message. Out of nowhere, a bell rang from outside the door. Lufan rushed to open it, asking about the investigation results, thinking it was the vice principal. Instead, Grandmaster Jing greeted him and told him not to worry. He wasn't some bad guy, though his words didn't exactly match his actions, considering he was carrying an unconscious guard over his shoulder. Lufan freaked out and pulled out his sword, assuming this was another assassin coming for him. But then Chiu suddenly called the guy Uncle Jing. That's when it clicked. This was the Grandmaster Jing that Uncle Hai had called his teacher. Lufan immediately apologized for the misunderstanding and thanked him for helping settle the Jinzhu situation. Chiu teased Grandmaster Jing, joking how the famous Griffin hero wasn't even recognized by the guards. Meanwhile, Lufan was totally hyped, realizing this was the legendary guy who'd fought an entire monster army solo. Grandmaster Jing cut to the chase and said he wanted to take Lufan up to the northern border. Lufan was still confused about what he meant. Grandmaster Jing explained he'd already gotten the principal's permission, and besides, Lufan could train there while staying out of danger. Ying and Chiu weren't thrilled. The northern border was uncharted territory, and anything could happen. But Grandmaster Jing argued that was exactly why it was the perfect training spot. Lufan wanted to go, but he was worried about leaving his friends behind. Ying and Chiu promised they'd look after Aunt Han and told him not to stress about it. So Lufan finally agreed to go with Grandmaster Jing. Grandmaster Jing was pumped and said he hadn't misjudged Lufan after all. Lufan said he'd grab some dinner first and then go say goodbye to his senior. Later, Lufan opened the training room like usual, waiting for his senior to show up. Sure enough, she arrived a little later and greeted him. She mentioned she'd been pretty busy lately and told him to hurry up and start training. But Lufan broke the news. He was heading to the northern border. His senior pinched his cheek and said it was a good idea. He'd learn a lot more there. Lufan blushed and promised he'd come back safe. Then he said he should get going since everyone was waiting. Out of nowhere, his senior hugged him from behind. She slipped a bracelet onto his wrist as a good luck charm. As she walked away, she wished him well and casually asked him to bring her back an unmelting ice. Lufan called after her, but she was already gone. All that was left in his hand were a few strands of her hair. Lufan finally headed back, buying some takeout when someone approached him from behind. It was Jinzhu's older brother, giving him a not-so-friendly greeting. Lufan tensed up and asked who the guy was. The guy smugly introduced himself as Jinzhu's brother and said he was here for revenge. He made it clear he wasn't letting Lufan walk away without paying for what happened to his sister. Lufan just straight up dropped his food on the floor like it was nothing. He pulled out his dagger without hesitation and told Jinhan to go fetch Jinzhu for him. Jinzhu showed up, expecting to see her big brother teach Lufan a lesson. Jinhan ordered Lufan to surrender and take a few slaps from Jinzhu. Then maybe he'd let him go. Lufan just laughed at Jinzhu, calling her out for not telling her brother the whole truth. That taunt set Jinzhu off, and she immediately begged her brother to attack Lufan. Jinhan summoned his pet monster. A creepy purple slime oozed forward, launching poison attacks. Lufan dodged like a pro, though no way he was getting hit by that. He figured if he took down Jinhan directly, the summoning spell would break. But Jinhan wasn't giving him an opening. He commanded his shadow creature to strike instead. Out of nowhere, Grandmaster Jing's King Griffin smashed into the shadow beast like a wrecking ball. Grandmaster Jing moved crazy fast, and dude was pissed at the Jin family. He landed right in the middle of the fight, gripping his spear like he meant business. Jinhan recognized the voice and the ride, but he still had doubts. Grandmaster Jing didn't hesitate. He straight up stabbed Jinhan with that spear. The spear went clean through his body. Yeah, that was not a minor injury. Grandmaster Jing asked if Jinhan knew who he was, but Jinhan was too busy trying to summon another shadow creature. Too bad for him. The King Griffin had that thing pinned down in seconds. Jinzhu got humiliated again, and now she was freaking out about her brother's fate. Finally, Jinhan realized who Grandmaster Jing really was. But before he could react, Grandmaster Jing shoved the spear deeper and ended him on the spot. Lufan was low-key horrified, watching the Grandmaster kill a guy like it was nothing. But Grandmaster Jing explained, abyssal summoners could use shadow creatures to bring their masters back to life. Jinzhu was full-on sobbing now, terrified for her brother. Sure enough, Jinhan crawled out of a shadow creature like some kind of horror movie scene. Desperate, Jinhan warned Grandmaster Jing that he couldn't be killed. He was an official representative of the Tai nation. Grandmaster Jing reminded Jinhan that Lufan was a representative too, so killing him now wouldn't even matter. Jinhan finally put the pieces together about Lufan's real identity and admitted he messed up. Grandmaster Jing straight up threatened them to leave Lufan alone, then killed Jinhan's shadow beast for good measure. Jinhan grabbed his sister and bolted. No way they were sticking around. Before leaving, though, Jinhan muttered something about revenge at the national exam arena. Lufan couldn't help but mock him for still running his mouth after literally dying once. Way back to Villa, Lufan suddenly remembered. His groceries were still spilled all over the ground. On the night of the farewell, everyone was chatting and drinking happily, with Xiaoman keeping Grandmaster Jing company. Meanwhile, Chiu and Aunt Han still couldn't bring themselves to accept that Lufan was leaving. The next morning, Lufan and Grandmaster Jing finally set off for the northern border, riding on the back of a king griffin. Once they arrived, Lufan spotted an eerie blood-red moon in the sky, sparking his curiosity, so he asked the Grandmaster about it. Jing promised to explain everything once they reached the camp. At the camp, Jing laid out the situation. They had 114 exploration routes, and every member needed solid riding skills to participate. Their mission is to investigate that mysterious red moon, but it wasn't as simple as it sounded. So far, they hadn't even been able to get close to it. However, with Lufan's dragon by his side, Jing was confident they'd uncover something groundbreaking. Lufan pointed out the exploration route closest to the blood moon. He asked for permission to take that path, since his divine treasure map also marked that location. Jing hesitated, warning him how dangerous it was, but Lufan insisted. Eventually, Jing agreed and pulled out a special item to hand over to Lufan. It was a legendary tier bow, ridiculously powerful. The bow could fire magic arrows with multiple built-in abilities. Lufan wasn't sure about accepting such a gift, but Jing made it clear: no bow, no mission. Grateful, Lufan thanked him and vowed to make it worth his while. Suddenly, one of Jing's subordinates showed up with a military uniform. They handed it to Lufan and told him to gear up. The mission started tomorrow. Lufan quickly threw on the uniform, already itching to get moving. Jing took him around to scout the area and get a feel for things. He found it odd that Lufan wasn't riding his dragon. Lufan explained that his black dragon hadn't hit level 30 yet. Out of nowhere, a flock of bird monsters swooped down, blocking their path. These were owl demons, creatures that could shoot poisonous feathers. One of them lunged at Jing while he was casually sipping his drink. Just as Lufan moved to help, Jing told him to worry about himself. With a single swipe, the king griffin crushed the monster instantly. Jing warned him that with reflexes like that, he'd have been dead already on Route 78, which was way riskier. That's when it hit Lufan. Up here in the north, he'd have to go all out, no holding back. Soon, they reached their destination. A massive red eye, reptilian and dragon-like, stared back at them. No one knew what it really was. They couldn't even inspect it properly. The thing was so enormous that the king griffin froze in fear at the sight of it. Lufan tried scanning it through his system, but even that couldn't identify it. That's why the exploration team existed, to map out deadly, uncharted territories like this. Jing remembered their first expedition, swarmed by owl demons. Suddenly, the giant eye snapped open, but it didn't attack or move afterward. Still, Jing could feel it was alive. The thought of it suddenly stirring sent chills down his spine. Then, Lufan spotted a squadron of griffins flying toward them. Jing admitted they used to be part of the griffin unit, but not anymore. Now, they were fallen corpses, level 65 undead beasts risen after death. A monster's fallen corpse suddenly attacked Lufan, but he managed to block the strike just in time. He turned to Jing and asked what their next move should be. Jing admitted those things were a pain to deal with, and that he wasn't exactly thrilled about killing them. King Griffin then unleashed its ice net ability, trapping the targets for a solid 5 seconds. The monsters got caught in the ice net, completely freezing them in place. Jing quickly signaled Lufan that it was time to bounce. Once the ice wore off, the monsters could only watch helplessly as the two disappeared into the distance. The next day, Lufan approached Jing with a bold plan. He wanted to fight on the front lines this time. The team waiting for them consisted of 3 people: an old man, a scruffy-looking guy, and a woman. The old man, named Lufei, was the team leader and formally reported their arrival to Jing. The scruffy guy, who seemed a little unsure of himself, asked what mission Jing had for them. Meanwhile, the young woman with a major attitude just stood there in silence, not saying a word. Jing then introduced Lufan as their newest team member. The team's expressions were full of doubt, but the scruffy guy, Liu, at least gave Lufan a friendly welcome. Lufei straight up asked Jing if he was joking, sending some college intern into the most dangerous exploration route. Jing told Lufei to ignore Lufan entirely, even in dangerous situations. Lufei agreed, though he had serious reservations. He ordered Lufan to follow them to the meeting room. The arrogant woman, on the other hand, was pissed and already saw Lufan as dead weight. Inside the meeting room, they carefully planned the expedition to avoid any disasters. They had 4 days to finish the mission before a snowstorm hit. Lufei assumed that with Lufan as a new member, they'd only need to cover 100 miles. But the smug woman, Shen, snarked that babysitting Lufan the whole way would slow them down. Lufei cut the chatter and told everyone to prep the griffins. They were leaving in 15 minutes. Lufan admitted his pet level wasn't high enough to ride one. Shen immediately refused to let him hitch a ride with her, but Lufan told them not to worry. He could fly even without a mount. Seeing him soar with rare gear, Shen wondered if his family had some special connection to Jing. But suddenly, Shen warned them to stay sharp. They were about to hit a dark cloud. Lufan got separated from the team, lost in the stormy black clouds. Then, out of nowhere, 2 strange figures came rushing at him from behind. A pair of massive black lion monsters with glowing red eyes lunged straight for Lufan. The lion monster went straight for Lufan, attacking him head-on. Lufan somehow managed to block the monster's assault, still holding his ground. But the monster wasn't backing down. It swung its massive claws for another strike. Out of nowhere, an attack came from the side, hitting the monster hard. It was Shen's eagle making its move, and Shen immediately told Lufan to get out of there. Liu quickly buffed Lufan, who was ready to charge back into the fight. But Shen stopped him, reminding the rookie that team orders came from Captain Lufei. Then, a terrifying roar echoed from the distance, freezing everyone in place. Liu realized what was coming and yelled at the team to fall back. Now, Lufan, still confused, scanned the area, trying to figure out what was happening. A gigantic whale monster emerged from behind, its sheer size dwarfing everything. Captain Lufei barked at Lufan to run, no hesitation. Liu was losing it, panic setting in as the nightmarish whale monster loomed closer. Meanwhile, Lufan was stuck between the lion monster and the whale, both closing in. The whale monster opened its jaws wide, sucking in everything in its path. Lufan was about to summon his dragon, asking Captain Lufei for permission. Lufei shot him down, ordering the team to retreat instead. But the whale monster was gaining fast, ready to swallow them whole. Luckily, it stopped chasing once they crossed out of the dark cloud zone. Lufan finally started understanding monster behavior. Each one had its own territory. The second that whale monster hit the black mist, it dropped dead like a fly. Captain Lufei called for a landing, telling everyone to take a breather. After touching down, Lufei set up an emergency tent while Shen fed her griffin. Shen complained about how slow their exploration was going, clearly frustrated. She snapped at Lufan, calling him deadweight and warning him to be more careful. Lufan stayed quiet, letting her rant without firing back. She kept going, telling him he should just go back to camp and handle logistics instead. But Lufan stayed calm, asking Shen to give him another chance. He'd learned a lot. Liu stepped in to mediate, and Captain Lufei told Shen to drop it. Lufei trusted Grandmaster Jing's judgment, and that was that. He ordered everyone to get some rest. Even so, both Lufei and Shen still had their doubts about Lufan's skills. Suddenly, Shen's eagle let out a warning cry. Something was coming. Shen immediately went on alert, telling the team to stay sharp. Seconds later, massive chunks of ice came rolling straight at them. Lufei and the others dodged to the side, barely avoiding the falling debris. Liu threw up a shield of protection, covering the team. but he got separated from Lufan in the chaos. Now alone, Lufan quickly checked his surroundings. What he saw wasn't good. A pack of level 80 yeti monsters, each with deadly skills. Lufei yelled out for Lufan, trying to make sure he was still alive. Meanwhile, Shen told him to keep his voice down so he wouldn't attract more monsters. But there was no response from Lufan. They assumed the worst, that he hadn't made it. Their new plan was to escape the pack of yeti monsters surrounding them. Just as Captain Lufei was about to explain their next move, Shen suddenly froze in shock. A yeti monster lunged at them, attacking without warning. Lufei managed to pull Shen out of harm's way just in time, but the force of the attack sent them both crashing to the side. Captain Lufei ordered Shen to go find Liu and get him to safety, while he held off the monsters as long as he could. Shen immediately took off, following orders, though she couldn't help worrying whether Lufei would survive. Before she could even leave the area, a loud crash made her turn back to check what was happening. She saw Captain Lufei struggling badly, completely overwhelmed by the Yeti's relentless attacks. Other Yetis started chasing after Shen, leaving her with no choice but to keep running. She called for her mount, but the sound only drew even more monsters toward her. The creatures were now zeroing in on the noise she'd just made. Shen quickly drew her sword, ready to buy as much time as possible. Meanwhile, Lufan had finally found Liu, who was clearly injured. A whole group of Yetis surrounded them, but Lufan didn't hesitate. He just pulled out his weapon like it was no big deal. Liu urged him to get out while he still could. There was no way he could take on level 80 Yeti monsters. One of the Yetis hurled a massive chunk of ice straight at Lufan, but Lufan deflected it easily with a Dragon Fang strike. Then he followed up with a Nyx Dragon Aura attack. The force of it sent the giant Yeti flying backward. Liu couldn't believe his eyes. Somehow, Lufan was actually holding his own against them. Lufan casually told Liu to stay put while he handled the rest. Another Yeti lifted a huge block of ice and chucked it right at Lufan. But Lufan activated Astra's Dragon Aura. The attack sliced through the massive ice chunk like it was butter. Liu wondered if he was dreaming. How was a level 32 Dragon Tamer going toe-to-toe with level 80 Yetis? Just then, Shen arrived, carrying an injured Captain Lufei, and they were both stunned to see Liu and Lufan still alive. Their shock only grew when they realized Lufan was actually fighting them off. While Lufan was distracted, a Yeti tried to ambush him from behind. But a massive sword from Lufei's skill suddenly pierced through the Yeti's body, saving him at the last second. Shen insisted they needed to escape now, but their griffin could only carry 2 people. Lufan brushed it off like it was nothing. He'd just finish off the Yetis, and they'd all be fine. Shen told him this wasn't the time for jokes, and that they needed to retreat immediately. Lufan wasn't kidding. He even offered to heal them, but the Yetis attacked again before he could. Shen tried to argue, but Lufan shut her down, telling her to stay quiet. He ordered her to tend to the others' injuries, while he pulled out the legendary arrow Grandmaster Jing had given him. Even Lufei was surprised Jing would hand over something that was valuable to him. Shen knew Grandmaster Jing could suppress an entire nation with that bow, yet she can't believe he'd just given it to Lufan. Lufan told them to go ahead while he wiped out the remaining Yetis. They didn't argue this time, though Captain Lufei did tell him to be careful. Once they were gone, Lufan drew the bowstring back, curious to test its full power. Shen couldn't help worrying about Lufan being left alone, but Liu reassured them. He'd seen Lufan fight, and he wasn't worried. Lufan took aim at the Yeti right in front of him, and fired. The Yeti monsters weren't about to give up that easily. They hurled massive chunks of ice straight at Lufan. Lufan adjusted his aim and fired at the incoming ice boulders. He shattered them to pieces, but the Yetis seized the opening to rush him. Seeing the relentless Yetis, Lufan decided to switch things up with a wide-area attack. The move launched 12 magic arrows, each striking a Yeti dead-on. Finally, Lufan called out Nyx and Astra to clean up the remaining monsters. Astra unleashed his star attack, its power scaling with his strength. He blasted one of the Yetis, obliterating it instantly and leaving behind a twinkling star mark that could explode any second. Lufan recalled Astra and went back to wielding his legendary bow. He took aim at the star mark Astra had left behind. The arrow, twisting like a serpent mid-flight, hit the mark dead center. A colossal explosion followed. The shockwave so intense even his teammates felt it. The blast sent them tumbling straight out of the sky. Once the dust settled, Griffin was spotted helping dig the exploration team out of the snow. Miraculously, everyone was alive and without serious injuries. Lufei gaped at the massive crater where the yetis had once stood, now flattened. Lufan praised Astra for a job well done, then left the rest to Nyx. He ordered her to scout the area, but Lufei suddenly called out to him. Lufan was confused why the whole team had regrouped. Lufei asked about the girl beside him, and Lufan introduced her as his companion. Nyx then shifted into her black dragon form, ready to clear the surrounding zone. The team stared at Lufan in shock. They'd just realized he was the legendary dragon tamer from the southern province. Lufan was baffled how they knew him, until Lufei mentioned Grandmaster Jing wouldn't stop talking about him, calling him a top candidate. Even Shen, who usually couldn't care less about others, recognized Lufan from the rumors. Lufan brushed it off, saying he was just a deadweight who knew nothing about the North. Lufei admitted he'd mentored plenty of reckless kids, but Lufan was calm and responsible. Shen actually apologized sincerely for looking down on him earlier. Lufan didn't mind. He was just happy to have a solid team. After wiping out the remaining monsters, Nyx finally hit level 30. She unlocked a new skill called Perception. The ability could detect any hidden or disguised enemies nearby. Leo suddenly had a realization. He guessed Lufan could now ride Nyx. Lufan confirmed it, pulling out his dragon saddle to give it a try. Lufei had no clue about the quality of Lufan's saddle and suggested using a high-end griffin saddle instead, but Lufan straight up refused. Shen agreed with Lufei's take, pointing out that their own saddle would boost their dragon's stats by 10%. But Lufan explained that his saddle was custom-made for dragons, giving a whopping 100% stat boost, plus some unique effects on top of that. His teammates were speechless. Everything Lufan had seemed to defy common sense. Lufei and the others couldn't wait any longer and urged Lufan to hop on Nyx. They were dying to see what she could do. Lufei felt kinda embarrassed about pushing his own saddle earlier. Shen agreed, admitting she'd thought Lufan would slow them down, but now it looked like he'd be carrying them instead. Lufan thanked Nyx for always protecting him, but from now on, they'd be fighting side by side. He strapped on the saddle and climbed onto Nyx's head. The power surge was insane. His stats skyrocketed like he could take down a whole country by himself. Even his skills transformed, adapting to the dragon he was riding. Luffy and Shen were in awe, staring at the world's only dragon rider, like they were witnessing history in the making. Leo couldn't help but feel jealous and a little sorry for himself. Compared to Lufan, he was basically an ant. Lufan and Nyx shot into the sky as the next wave of monsters approached. Lufan told Nyx to use her perception skill. Nyx's eyes glowed red, sending out a wave of light that scanned the area. Sure enough, a bunch of camouflaged butterfly monsters were hiding nearby. Lufei and the others were impressed. Nyx made detecting hidden enemies look easy. Lufei knew these things were dangerous and immediately ordered everyone to fall back. These monsters, called snow moths, had camouflage skills and could drain their enemies' blood. But dangerous didn't mean much to Lufan. He and Nyx charged straight at them. Lufan gathered black dragon aura into his dagger. With a single slash, he sent out a red energy wave that wiped out several snow moths. The team couldn't believe it. These deadly monsters were like toys in Lufan's hands. But then, the snow moths ambushed the other team members. Out of nowhere, another red energy slash cut through the moths. It was a long-range attack from Lufan, perfectly synced with Nyx. Then, Nyx unleashed her dragon breath, burning the remaining snow moths to a crisp. With the snow moths finally defeated, Lufei couldn't stop praising Lufan's insane strength. Liu got pumped. With Lufan around, they didn't have to worry about snow moth ambushes anymore. Shen scolded him for relying too much on Lufan. Lufan confidently assured them they could keep exploring without worrying about the coming storm. Lufei checked the sky and predicted the storm would hit by tomorrow. They were worried they wouldn't make it back to camp in time if it arrived early, but Lufan told them not to sweat it. He could handle whatever came their way. He promised he'd get everyone home safely. even through the blizzard. After a moment of thought, Captain Lu decided to trust Lufan's word. Lufan and the others pushed forward on their journey, cutting down every snow moth that crossed their path. After slaughtering thousands of snow moths, Lufan finally got his hands on the item his senior had been hoping for, unmelting ice. He signaled the rest of the group to move closer, assuring them the area was now secure. Battling the freezing blizzard, they struggled to keep up with Lufan, who was leading the way. Liu couldn't help but wish he had even half of Lufan's skills. With that, he'd easily earn a gold badge. Shen rolled her eyes and told him to stop daydreaming about nonsense. Both Liu and Shen suggested heading back soon. Their food supplies were running low, and their stamina was fading fast. Lufan agreed. Nyx was shivering from the cold and starving. Before turning back, Shen decided to set up a marker signal first. She planted a device into the ground and activated it. The marker emitted a rotating red light, like a beacon cutting through the snowy air. Lufei explained that these signals marked explored locations, and soon a construction team would set up a temporary outpost there. Once the signal was active, they finally began their trek back to camp. But what they didn't expect was the sudden appearance of a fallen corpse, a former Griffin Force soldier, watching them from the shadows. Back at camp, Lufei immediately gathered the team to brief them on their next steps. Lufan approached Shen, asking if she knew any experts who could process the unmelting ice. As he spoke, a lucky bracelet dangled from his wrist. Shen, assuming Lufan wanted to gift the ice to a lover, mentioned an old craftsman named Old Man Zhu. Without wasting time, Lufan thanked her and headed straight there. Turns out, Shen also had a piece of unmelting ice, worn as a pendant around her neck. For a moment, it looked like she was lost in thought, missing someone who never came back. Arriving at a blacksmith's workshop, a burly man promised Lufan he'd craft the most beautiful accessory from the ice. Out of nowhere, Jing showed up, surprised that Lufan had come here right after his mission. Jing then handed Lufan a bronze badge as a reward for saving the entire team. Lufan couldn't help but feel proud of his achievement. Jing had also heard reports from Lufei and Liu about Lufan riding his dragon, and wanted to see it for himself. He got a good sense of Nyx's power when he saw her devouring meat like a starved beast. Then, Grandmaster Jing decided to show Lufan something special. He handed him a file containing intel on explorations in other nations. Inside was an image of a giant skull, lying among bones that didn't look like they belonged to any normal creature. Even massive construction equipment looked like tiny ants next to it. There was also video footage from an expedition that Jing wanted Lufan to see in person, so he told him to follow. The more Lufan learned, the more fascinated he became. This world was full of secrets waiting to be uncovered. The video showed a massive skull just lying on the ground, with 6 bones sticking out from its back. 2 scientists had arrived to examine the bizarre remains. Next, the 2 scientists pointed out someone they called Master Charles, who was exploring a church-like building in the distance. A mysterious sound echoed from the church, making them worry about the expedition team that hadn't returned from inside. Out of nowhere, a figure resembling an angel, holding a sword, started approaching them. They recognized the man as one of the missing team members who had gone into the church earlier, but instead of greeting them, the guy suddenly lunged with his sword, trying to cut them down. The video cut off there. Jing explained that anyone who got close to that church or the skull had mutated into monsters. Lufan noticed similarities to the fallen corpses created by the blood moon's effects. Jing confirmed it, and scholars theorized that something called the ancient gods was leading them. Lufan wasn't buying the idea of gods that would harm humans. It didn't add up. He suspected something else was hiding in the shadows. Jing agreed, warning that they'd need to be extra careful on their next expedition. Lufan then asked what happened to the researchers' families from the video. Jing revealed they'd killed everyone except Charles Morgan, who was also a national exam participant representing his country. The angel monsters didn't just spare Charles, they gave him something called the Essence of the Holy Mountain. That item unlocked a hidden profession for Charles, one even the scholars knew nothing about. It was called Holy Priest, with no records or data explaining its powers. Jing warned Lufan to watch out for Charles during the national exam. He'd likely be his final opponent, but Lufan was confident he'd win no matter what. 2 days later, Lufan visited the blacksmith to pick up his accessories. Of course, he didn't leave empty-handed. He gave old Zhu some expensive alcohol as thanks for the hard work. Shen and Liu showed up to fetch him, ready to head out on their next expedition. The group set off in high spirits. Though Shen and Liu were low-key jealous of Lufan's new bronze badge, Lufei bragged about packing enough supplies for 15 days, planning to explore as far as possible. But something felt off to Lufan. The marker signals they'd set up earlier were missing. Turned out, the markers had been knocked to the ground, which Shen blamed on a recent storm. Lufan's gut told him otherwise. The eerie silence felt like a trap, waiting to snap shut. Liu, ever the patient one, moved ahead without hesitation. Lufan tried to warn him about a possible ambush. And sure enough, invisible monsters lunged at Liu from the side. They were surrounded. Lufan had cleared these monsters before, but now they were back in full force. He reminded Lufei about the holy mountain puppet controlling them. Then, a fallen corpse spoke up, confirming their existence. Liu stared at the corpse in shock. He knew that face. It was Liluo, Shen's fiancée, the one who never came back. And now, she was greeting Shen like no time had passed at all. The swarm of monsters started closing in on Lufan and the others, their eerie presence sending chills down everyone's spines. Lufei quickly explained how Liluo had vanished after the Blood Moon exploration mission, never expecting he'd end up as a fallen corpse. Shen collapsed to the ground, completely shattered when she realized her fiancé was already dead. She admitted how much she missed Liluo, begging him to come back with them. To everyone's surprise, Liluo stepped closer, whispering that he missed Shen too. Without hesitation, Shen pulled him into a tight hug, but Liluo just stood there, cold and unresponsive. A dark aura suddenly radiated from Liluo as he gripped Shen hard, telling her they should stay together, forever. He tried forcing Shen to serve their soon-to-awaken god, which terrified the poor girl. Liluo promised they'd have eternal life if they just devoted themselves to his deity. Shen pleaded with him, desperate for Liluo to stop this madness. Out of nowhere, Lufan snapped Shen out of it. Turns out she'd been trapped in Liluo's hallucination skill the whole time. Liluo then gave them an ultimatum: swear loyalty to his god, or die right here. Lufan immediately planned to fight through the monsters and make a run for it. Liu suggested fixing the signal markers so the construction team could track their location, but Lufan just calmly told everyone to relax. There was no need to run. He was gonna slaughter every last one of these things like he always did, pulling out his legendary bow. No way was he letting all those military points go to waste. Liluo didn't waste time either, ordering the monsters to attack. Lufan drew his bowstring, charging up a massive area of effect shot. Liu quickly activated his shield skill, covering the whole team. Lufan unleashed a barrage of magic arrows, hitting every monster in sight, including Liluo. While Liluo was distracted dodging the arrows, Lufan slipped behind him and called for Nyx. The dragon emerged in a blaze of fiery aura, and Lufan hopped right onto her back. He gathered Nyx's draconic energy into his sword and swung with everything he had. The slash cut Liluo down instantly. Not stopping there, Nyx unleashed her dragon breath, torching the remaining monsters in the area. They burned to ashes without a trace. The sheer power of the attack left the rest of the team stunned. Liluo crumpled to the ground, completely bewildered about how things had gone so wrong for him. Shen rushed over to Liluo's defeated body, her heart breaking at the sight. It hurt even more, knowing her fiancé's soul wasn't even his own anymore. Suddenly, dark energy seeped out of Liluo's body, dispersing into the air before vanishing completely. Liluo finally regained his true self, weakly touching Shen's face and urging her to leave. He managed to whisper one last crucial piece of info about some ruins before his strength gave out and he slipped away for good. Shen completely broke down, sobbing hysterically as she clung to Liluo's lifeless body. In those final seconds, it really felt like Liluo had come back to her, and Lufan confirmed it. He really had.